Hello there!
Welcome back to another video! This week I thought I would do a sort of video that I actually haven't done in a bit, and it's going to be mainly just explaining the process behind this painting, because I was thinking about it, and recently every time I've done a digital illustration, or really any illustration in general, I've had like a different sort of topic to talk about that's not pertaining exactly to the process of the painting. So I thought that I would just kind of discuss my thought process and sort of like the order of operations behind this illustration. And this illustration is actually a commission for my good friend Darkpetal16, because it's been 5 years since she finished one of her fanfics called Decaying Bluebells, and I didn't artwork for this illustration like 6 years ago while it was still like in progress, and I'll sandwich it in here. But yeah, so she commissioned me to draw the two characters, and she said it's a Naruto fanfic, so it's going to be in Konoha, which is the village in Naruto, and it's the two characters. One of them is an OC, the girl, she's an OC, her name is Nell, and the guy, his name is Yagoda. He's kind of a minor Naruto character, but he was the host for the Three Tails, and yeah, for the majority of actual Naruto he's kind of dead, but in this fanfic he's not. But yeah, the basic process that I follow when doing a digital painting, usually, like sometimes it changes, sometimes I'm doing something more painterly, sometimes I'm doing something that's a little bit more like graphic designy. So usually what I do is I sketch, and I try to start my sketch when I'm fairly zoomed out of things, so I go from being very loose to very detailed. And this one, because I knew that it was going to be featuring a background that the characters were going to be interacting with, in this case sitting, I wanted to start with the background. So the elements in the background that I started with was the memorial stone, which is just this place in Konoha, and then I did the characters, and then now really quick you just saw me sketching a couple more like further in the background elements that aren't so important. And yeah, then it was just sort of a matter of refining the sketches, and I had actually so much trouble with the arm that's on top of Nao's head. Just for some reason I really couldn't get the geometry of it to work out. But after sketching, everything is done for the most part. For this one I decided to do line art. Sometimes I do line art with just the brush that I sketched with, but at a higher opacity, so it's darker. Other times I have a special line art brush that's very sharp, and it has a lot of pressure sensitivity, so it gets really thin or really thick depending on how much pressure I put on it. So for this one, what I did wasn't the sketching brush, it was just the default Photoshop hard round brush. But with the sketching, what I do is I use a brush that the lighter you press, the more transparent it gets, so its opacity goes along with the pressure. But this brush, it doesn't do that, it's just 100% black, which I don't know why. I really, the reason why I wanted to do this video discussing this process of how I did this painting was because this painting, I didn't really have many plans on how I wanted to go about it. I knew what I wanted it to look like, and then I just sort of let muscle memory kick in for the most part. And I just find that really interesting, and especially like to explain it, because I've been a digital artist for like 10 years now. So being a digital artist for 10 years, like you can imagine that a lot of things are habit. I go on autopilot for a lot of things, and I guess this is the most autopilot-y kind of thing. Like there wasn't anything besides kind of the concept of the illustration. There wasn't anything in this illustration that was like out of my comfort zone. There wasn't anything that I was like trying for the first time, I guess, rather than it was just kind of like the fact that I was quote unquote trying for the first time was not trying to do anything extra for once, because I've been trying to do a lot of different things that I don't usually do to try to make myself better, but for this one it just wasn't. So I guess I glossed over a lot of like the process bit. So after doing the line art, I use the Polygono lasso tool to do the base colors, and I go typically from like small details to broader areas. So I do hair, skin, and then small details, and then what I do is every new kind of area of color, I put it underneath the layers of color that I've already done, so that way I get to not have to be as precise with the further I go down, so I can be a little bit more relaxed, and I don't have to color exactly in the lines if I already got the areas on the outside of those areas already coloured. I don't have to be as precise. And then what I did for the background was, originally I thought that I was going to do like a line art colour and fill sort of thing with the background like I did with the characters to make it more seamless, but then I was just like, I don't really feel like it. So what I did is just I grabbed my chalk brush and I did it in a couple layers. It wasn't all on one layer, but I did it in a couple layers where I just like did the sky, added some cloud details. I filled in like the base colours for the elements, sort of like especially the memory stone, and then later on like the further backgrounds, and just trying to mess around with my brush settings a little bit and be really loose and not think too much about it. Like I wanted a couple things to look a little bit more solid, but at the same time the focus is the characters, so I don't really mind that the only things that are line arted and really sharp are the characters and everything else is a little bit painterly. Like when you zoom out a bit more you don't notice as much, like I feel like the little bits of Konoha in the background, like with the mountain and the buildings and stuff, they read as a sort of city type thing, even though the edges are really fuzzy and the colours are kind of muted, but also that helps keep them in the background and keep the viewer's eyes focused on the characters. And then we're moving on to like the shading and stuff like that. For shading, a lot of the time when I do hard line art, I try to do more cell shaded type of look, just try to make it cohesive, and then when I do more of a painterly look, I try to blend it in with the line art some more. But this time I was just like, again, running on autopilot. So what I did was just, for the hair, I used my chalk brush and I just put areas of highlight, put areas of shadow, and then a couple like specular lines. With the skin, I used a soft brush because I like using soft brushes for skin, because I feel like skin has a lot more seamless transitions, and having more like textures like the chalk brush in skin helps make the skin look like older, and these characters aren't that old, so I thought it better to just use a soft brush for the skin and not worry about it. And I posted not long ago a skin tutorial if you want to know a little bit more details on how I choose my colours for skin. I go over pale skin, which is what Now is, and sort of tan skin, which is what Yagura is. I would call Yagura a bit more like paler than tan, but anyway, there's a video on my channel. I'll put a link in the card if you want to find out more about how I do that. And then yeah, I go just down my masks of colour to try to shade things element by element, and I do colour in the line art for the hair and the skin in particular. There's a couple other things that I also colour the line art for, but I'm not as precise with them as I am with the skin and the hair, because I feel like if you colour your outlines for your skin a very dark red colour, it gives them a lot of life, but then other bits you don't really notice as much. Like it's typically not recommended to have anything that's 100% black in your paintings, but I don't mind if a couple of my lines are 100% black, especially if they're the lines pertaining to something that's already supposed to be a dark colour, like say Nao's leggings or her sandals. So yeah, then after I finished kind of doing the basic shading and colouring and all that of the characters, I started refining the background a little bit more. And so what that's supposed to be next to Yagura to the right is a bouquet of bluebells, which originally Dark Pencil 16 said about doing bluebell flower crowns, but I wanted to have Yagura patting Nao's head as a homage to the original piece I did 6 years ago. So after talking to her about it, she said a bouquet would also work, because I felt like having a head pat as well as a flower crown would be a bit too crowded on the heads. And then now we're going into like a sort of last minute detail that I decided to do with some white butterflies that are a little bit transparent, because in the story Nao works with butterflies, and that's kind of one of the strongest bits of imagery that I have of this. So this is the finished illustration, and that's basically been my process for it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to check out other videos on my channel, and I'll see you all next week.